In 2020, a submersible dropped into the Gulf of Mexico. Nothing special at first. The cameras showed the usual deep-sea scenery: gray silt, tube worms, crabs crawling through a crust of salt. The operators on board barely glanced at their monitors. Then the sub dipped a little deeper, and everyone went silent. There it was, a lake. A full-on, honest-to-God lake. It had a shoreline, it had waves, the surface shimmered like a mirror, and it sat on the ocean floor, nearly 2,000 feet down, a body of water inside a body of water. Water inside water, but shockingly different from the ocean around it. A visible boundary separated the two. Think oil and vinegar in a salad dressing. That's exactly what it looked like. The shoreline was alive. Mussels and tube worms packed the edges so tightly, the ground seemed to move. But here's the twist: any fish that swam in came out dead, or didn't come out at all. Scientists call these formations brine pools. They defy everything we think we know about oceans. To understand why they exist, start with something obvious. Water mixes with water. Pour a glass into a bucket, one liquid, no barrier, no separation. That's why rivers blend into the sea, right? Well, not always. There's an exception. It comes down to density. When two liquids differ enough in density, they refuse to mix. They hold a boundary, sometimes for thousands of years. Brine pools take this to the extreme. The salt concentration makes them 5 times denser than seawater. This heavy liquid sinks into depressions on the seafloor. It just sits there, stable still, almost alive. So where does all that salt come from? The answer goes back about 25 million years. The Atlantic Ocean was much smaller then. Tectonic shifts kept isolating sections from the open sea. These trapped basins baked under a tropical sun. They evaporated again and again until only salt remained. Massive layers of it, kilometers thick deposits, buried under millions of years of sediment. Under the Gulf of Mexico, these salt layers run 5 miles thick. That's taller than Mount Everest. And the salt doesn't just sit still under immense pressure. It behaves like slow-moving putty. It oozes upward in massive domes. It cracks through rock. When a dome reaches the seafloor, ocean water dissolves it. The resulting brine is heavier than everything around it. It flows downhill into every crack and basin, and it stays put. This process takes an absurdly long time. Some pools have been forming for 100,000 years. They didn't just appear. They accumulated slowly, like a debt nobody intends to pay. Salt domes feeding them keep moving today, just a few millimeters per year, but they never stop. The pools themselves are constantly changing. Some expand, others shrink, some merge together. The Gulf floor is a living landscape in slow motion. The first brine pool turned up in the Red Sea in the 1960s. Researchers stumbled on it almost by accident. Everyone shrugged. A geological oddity, they figured. Nobody imagined these things could be common. Decades passed before better technology proved otherwise. Today we've found brine pools across the globe. The Gulf, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, the Black Sea. Some are tiny, just a few feet across. Others are staggering. One Red Sea formation spans several square miles. Its depth exceeds 650 feet. It has its own floor, shoreline, and inhabitants. Now the chemistry. That's where things get truly wild. These pools contain insane concentrations of toxic substances: hydrogen sulfide, methane, copper, zinc, iron. Some reach temperatures of 150 degree Fahrenheit or higher. Not from volcanoes, from geothermal heat trapped inside. Oxygen inside the brine, practically zero. For most life on Earth, this water means instant death. Fish that wander in die within minutes. Crabs that touch the surface float away dazed, if at all. Researchers have filmed eerie graveyards along the shorelines, dead fish and invertebrates swept to the edge by currents. And yet, life thrives here. This might be the most jaw-dropping part of the whole story. Right along the edges, something extraordinary happens. Normal seawater gradually blends into brine there. In that narrow transition zone, life explodes. Mussels, tube worms, specialized crustaceans, all packed in densities that dwarf the rest of the deep-sea floor. The closer to the deadly water, the more life you find. It sounds like a paradox, but the logic is bulletproof. The brine constantly releases methane and hydrogen sulfide. Bacteria feed on those chemicals. Everything else feeds on the bacteria. The pool literally fuels its own neighbors. The best real estate is right at the edge of death. Think of it like an oasis in the desert, except surrounded by the most hostile water imaginable. And none of this runs on sunlight. At these depths, not a single photon reaches the bottom. Bacteria harvest energy from chemical reactions at the boundary. This process is called chemosynthesis. It powers the entire food chain. Zero sunlight required. Bacteria feed filter feeders feed predators. The whole ecosystem runs on raw chemistry. This blew apart a fundamental assumption about life on Earth. All life depends on the sun, or so we thought. Brine pools proved that wrong. Life can exist in total darkness, under crushing pressure, in water that kills most known organisms, and it runs entirely on chemical energy. That made brine pools irresistible to astrobiologists. Think about Europa, Jupiter's icy moon. It hides a liquid ocean beneath its frozen crust. Or Enceladus, orbiting Saturn. It shoots geysers of water and organic molecules into space. Neither moon gets enough sunlight for photosynthesis, but if life thrives in the Gulf's chemical ecosystems, why not out there? Researchers say it directly. This work matters far beyond oceanography. Every organism found here expands what we consider habitable. Every discovery makes the universe feel a little less empty. Now let's dive back down. Brine pools hold more unsolved mysteries. Some pools are surprisingly young, just a few thousand years old. Others have lasted tens of thousands of years. The strangest part, some show evidence of changing composition over time. Active brine flow alternated with long, quiet periods. Levels rose and fell. Was it tectonic movement? Pressure shifts in the salt domes? Nobody knows. Deep inside the brine, where oxygen is absent and toxicity peaks, microorganisms thrive. They don't just survive, they reproduce, they form communities. These are extremophiles, conditions that make life seem absurd. They're adapted to them. Many belong to the archaea, one of life's three ancient branches. Their biochemistry feels like a different version of life entirely. Some of these microbes pull off something truly mind-bending. They function with almost no available water. At extreme salt concentrations, water molecules get hogged by salt ions. They become biochemically useless. These cells maintain internal pressure through wild evolutionary tricks. They live in an environment that constantly tries to drain them dry. Brine pools also serve as perfect natural archives. Anything that sinks in enters a zero-oxygen environment. Organic material barely breaks down there. It can survive nearly intact for millennia. Scientists treat these pools as time capsules of ocean history. In the Mediterranean, brine pools sit at depths exceeding 2 miles. Scientists recovered organic molecules thousands of years old from them, practically unchanged since settling to the bottom. Imagine finding a jar of jam made millennia ago, still fresh. What happens when a sub actually enters a brine pool? Several teams have tried. The sub crosses the boundary. cameras capture something like descending into thick fog. Visibility drops instantly. The interface shimmers like heat haze off hot pavement. That's refraction, light bending between two different densities. Once fully inside, visibility returns, but the scene changes completely. White and yellow crystals cover the bottom. No life, no movement, total stillness. The brine is too heavy for any current to disturb. The 2020 Gulf discovery brought brine pools massive public attention. The pool was small, about 15 feet wide, maybe 100 long, but its condition was pristine. Mussels and tube worms lined the edges densely. The brine surface sat perfectly undisturbed. The team spent hours collecting samples and measurements. The footage went viral, millions of views. What people saw simply didn't match any familiar reality. There's a deeper principle at work here. Biologists call it an ecotone. It's a transition zone between two different ecosystems. It's almost always richer in life than either one alone. A forest edge beats deep woods and open fields. Coastline beats open ocean and dry land. Brine pool shorelines are the ultimate ecotone. One world kills, the other sustains life. At the boundary, life hits peak density. This isn't poetry, it's measured data. Biomass at brine pool edges dwarfs typical deep-sea floor nearby. More organisms, more species, more biochemical activity. The deadly brine doesn't repel life, it attracts it. The brine is an energy source. The boundary is where that energy gets released. One more connection worth making: oil and gas. The same salt formations that feed brine pools trap hydrocarbons brilliantly. Oil and gas migrate through rock until they hit something impermeable. Salt is one of the best barriers nature offers. That's why the Gulf is one of Earth's richest petroleum regions. Oil companies mapped these salt structures for decades. They had no idea they were also mapping brine pool habitats. That creates real tension. Drilling here has gone on for over 50 years. Pipelines cross zones where brine pools sit. The Deepwater Horizon disaster in 2010 happened in a salt dome-rich area. Yet nobody studied how oil operations affect these ecosystems. Science has been playing catch-up with industry for years. Studying brine pools is brutally hard on equipment too. The brine devours metal parts on submersibles. It clogs filters and wrecks camera lenses. Sampling requires pressurized containers that seal at depth. Otherwise, dissolved gases escape, and the sample is ruined. Growing brine microbes in a lab, nearly impossible for years. Standard growth media are too diluted. Normal atmosphere has too much oxygen. Many species have never been cultured outside their natural habitat. But progress is real. Autonomous underwater drones can now hover over pools for hours. Some teams have installed monitoring stations on the shorelines. These stations track conditions for months at a time. Long-term data is finally answering previously impossible questions. This story is really about how Earth keeps surprising us. The Gulf of Mexico is no remote wilderness. Pipelines cover its floor. Oil platforms dot its shelf. Its waters have been charted endlessly. Yet in 2020, seasoned researchers sat in stunned silence. The ocean covers over 70% of Earth's surface. Its average depth is nearly 2.5 miles. We know the surface reasonably well. We know the shallows. But the deepest, darkest reaches, we've explored less than 5% of the deep ocean floor. The rest is true terra incognita, unknown land, underwater. Brine pools weren't hiding in some unreachable corner. They were in the Gulf, mapped, drilled, crossed by ships for generations. Entire ecosystems stayed invisible. All it took was lowering a camera just a little deeper. How many brine pools exist worldwide? Honestly, nobody knows. That's not exaggeration, it's fact. We've only found the ones a submersible happened to pass over. No systematic global survey has ever been conducted. The known pools are probably a small fraction of reality. How small? Anyone's guess. There's something profound about these underwater lakes, something bigger than any single discovery. They tell us the world is richer and stranger than our models predict. Where we expect uniformity, it's all just ocean, right? Nature builds hidden boundaries and secret worlds. Life finds a way where every rule says it shouldn't. And the most astonishing things on this planet, they're not always on the other side of the globe. Sometimes they're right beneath a ship that's passed overhead 100 times.